Oh, we are coming to this world crying, but it doesn't mean that we're weak, it just means we're alive. Yeah, we're alive. Oh, somewhere, somehow we all learn to hide it. Don't show the fire in your soul, just keep it inside. Yeah, keep it inside. Oh, hiding away in the darkness. Oh, but the sunlight, it fights to get in. Break down the walls that I built for my...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another month, another Fireside chat coming to you from the SONA Foundation. I am Ariel Silver. I am a songwriter and I'm the program manager over here at the at the SONA Foundation. We were just talking backstage about how important these kinds of conversations are, these monthly conversations that we're hosting in partnership with Backline, a mental health organization that provides services for folks in the music industry. These kinds of resources, just bringing human stories and putting a spotlight on them, just personal experiences and, really just being able to be human together as songwriters and talk about how we're navigating life, how we're navigating the music industry. It's a strange work to do, this navigating of the industry and also the creative life and just life in general. And so these conversations have been so great. This is, I believe, the 23rd one that we are doing, maybe 22nd, somewhere around there. And just collecting all of these conversations and monthly participating in them has been such a valuable experience for me personally. And I know also for Terra Lopez, who is the conversation facilitator. She is again with us this month. She's coming to us from Backline, and I'll bring her onto the screen in just a second, and she will introduce our guest songwriters and our clinical counselor for this month's conversation, focused on AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander heritage and culture in the music industry. I first want to make sure that you know that our website, sonafoundation.com, always has constantly updating information and resources for songwriters under our pillars of mental health, financial wellness, and career development, as well as the various emergency grants that we are able to bring forward here and there. So those grants change over time, but we encourage you to be on our mailing list, which you can find at sonafoundation.com, and I'll put the link in the comment section as well. And just poke around there and find the resources, as well as some of the upcoming events that we have. We host in-person and virtual events like this one, and always working on new projects. So we hope that you will stay in touch, and we hope that you enjoy this conversation. I'm going to bring Terra Lopez in right now. She is the community manager over at Backline. And let's see here, finding my buttons. Hi, Terra.
Hey, Ariel. How's it going?
Very good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Right? Yeah, me too. I really am. And we were talking backstage before I hit the go button just now about how important it is. It's when I think about the history of the music industry, and it really depends on where you are in the world and what that looks like, but the lens or the spotlight can be really narrow. And, I feel like these conversations, what we're doing is we're really broadening the light and making sure that everybody who is actually in the industry is able to share their stories. And I don't know, it feels like it's a richer life for all of these conversations.
Yes, I truly believe that we're helping uplift and highlight voices that just aren't heard in the industry. And I think that that's just the most important work. So I always look forward to these conversations. I think they're always just so insightful. So I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, well, we're honored to have you. And I'm going to take myself off the screen and let you introduce our guests today and tell us a little bit about Backline as well. See you soon.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Terra Lopez. I'm the community manager and head of artist partnerships at Backline. And as most of you probably know by now, because Ariel mentioned 23, this is possibly the 23rd conversation, which is wild. But if you don't know, Backline is a resource hub for the music industry. We provide mental health and wellness resources for music industry professionals and their family members. And we've teamed up with the SONA Foundation for these very special fireside chats every month to talk about mental health for songwriters. And specifically today, we are celebrating AAPI Heritage. So today we have some very special guests. Joveth is a singer-songwriter who's growing up with the strict discipline of Asian culture, while within his home of free-spirited Sweden has instilled these opposites that have informed his journey and art in every shape it takes. He blends R&B, EDM, rock, and soul into this unique and really, really cool sound all his own. We also have Stefani Fryzel. She has spent 2 decades in the music industry as an artist, a songwriter, a music producer. Her work has been nominated for a Grammy, featured on the Billboard chart for emerging artists, and has also appeared in film and TV. When she's not creating music, Stefani is also a creative coach for artists and songwriters, helping others reach their full potential. And lastly, we have Nikki Alonso-Scott. She's a clinical counselor who believes that inclusiveness is the moral obligation to treat one another equally. I love that. Her main areas of focus include psychodynamic therapy, relationship therapy, brain spotting, and relational cultural therapy. She has over 12 years of experience in integrative medicine. So alongside Mental Health Awareness Month, May is also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So I'm very excited to have this conversation today, and we are going to let these folks in. Awesome. Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just very, very excited and honored to share space. I want to always start these conversations off with just a general, how are you doing today in this moment? Stefani, why don't you kick it off?
Ooh, we were just talking about this backstage. So how am I doing today? I am 4 months postpartum, just a little bit over. And I actually caught last month's conversation around motherhood, which I personally really needed. So I am just grateful to be here and to be part of this conversation and bring some perspective to the table. So I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Joveth.
Hi, I'm feeling really good. I'm in Santa Barbara right now, so the weather is beautiful. And I'm actually feeling very honored to be a part of this chat right now. And as an artist and musician and a songwriter, I feel very honored. And I feel like this conversation is going to help me a little bit to see certain things that I don't see. So I'm excited.
I love that. And Nikki, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. It's Monday. I'm super honored to be here and humbled and excited that AAPI Heritage and Music is being represented. Glad and great to be amongst all of you. Yeah, I'm just excited, a little nervous, but excited.
No need to be nervous. This is just a casual conversation, and let's kick it off. I want to start with Joveth and Stefani. As you know, these monthly fireside chats are conversations with songwriters about personal experiences of all kinds through a creative life and mental health lens. And this month, as part of our celebration of songwriters and Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage, I'd like to start with hearing a little bit about both of your cultural backgrounds. So culturally, where is your family from? And also culturally speaking, how do you identify?
Did you want to go first, Joveth, or?
You go ahead.
Okay, I'll go first.
We started with you earlier. Go ahead.
I love that there's a two-part to this question, because you can be part of a culture and maybe not even identify with it. So I'm half Filipino, half Caucasian. I grew up in a very small town in Canada, so I'm Canadian. My mom's Filipino. My dad is white, and he grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. Both of them came from severe poverty. Probably more so my mom from the Philippines. And so I have a unique lens of sort of like a blending of two cultures. It's like these are, I'm part of both cultures, but it's almost like which one am I, and it's like I'm both. And I did grow up with my dad, so, and in a primarily white neighborhood. I also have the privilege of being white passing, even though I'm mixed. And it's definitely been a process of its own, just to identify with like, okay, well, who am I if I'm from two different cultures? So I think I definitely identify with both, but I've definitely, reaped the benefits of, growing in a white neighborhood. And, I have had every single opportunity that my parents never did. So I definitely, acknowledge the privilege of that and of its own. I think that's just a little bit about my background. I'm mixed, so I'm a Hapa Filipino. Go ahead, Joveth.
So I was born in the Philippines, so I'm Filipino, 100%. But I basically moved to Sweden when I was roughly 4 years old. So I grew up with a little bit of Filipino culture in the beginning, but in Sweden, I got this culture shock of Swedish culture, right? And I grew up in a neighborhood where basically a lot of, immigrants and just colored skin in general. So being around that area kind of grew up my culture, from Sweden in general. And I lived my entire life in Sweden, and moving to America, probably around 19 to 20 years old, I realized that I enjoy American culture. So culturally, I feel kind of a mix between three cultures right now in my life. Being raised by my mom and my dad, who are Filipino culture, had taught me so many things, and also learned so much about, our heritage in general. Coming to America and exploring myself as a songwriter has opened my whole mindset about who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And Nikki, what about you?
I am 100% Filipino, but born and raised in California. My parents were immigrants, and I remember them getting naturalized, like sitting on the floor of the room, watching them take the oath. I was like 4 or 5 years old, holding a teddy bear, just like, I don't know what's going on, but this is cool. But very much raised in a small immigrant farming town where my dad was the only doctor, who birthed all of my classmates and me. Like, that's how small we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up, Filipinos come to America and they want their kids to become Americans. So I dove in. I was an American kid until I realized, oh, I have culture. And that didn't happen literally until grad school. And I took multicultural classes. And I was like, they're asking me questions that I don't know the answers to about my own heritage and my family. And it was I had a lot of grief because I don't know these parts of myself. And then both my parents had passed. So who do I ask? Who's left? So it's been a lot of reckoning for myself to be like, how am I going to show up in a BIPOC? Like, that's who I see as BIPOC clients. Like, how am I going to show up? And I've been raised as this like white kid in an immigrant town with no one to ask. And so it's like, there are definitely probably people who are more Filipino than I am. And they know more about my culture than I do. And that's, it's been hard to like tear all that apart and like own who I am and feel okay about owning my culture.
Thank you so much for talking about that, because I'm sure a lot of folks can identify with that grief. And also if you're, if your parents have passed and other family members aren't there to answer the many questions that I'm sure come up about identity and culture. I definitely want to get into that and kind of see if Stefani and Joveth, if you've experienced that at all. But I guess first off, I'd also like to know, do you feel a sense of responsibility to represent your community through your music? And if you do, how do you do that?
Yeah, I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility to represent my people. I definitely relate to what you're experiencing, Nikki, because I did grow up in a white neighborhood with my white dad. So my identity is definitely leaning more in that direction. But my mom's Filipino. I went to the Philippines with her. I went to her house. I saw how she lived in the house. So it's not a house. It's a shack. Okay, like let's be real. And it was such a culture shock. And I was like, whoa, like this is how my mom grew up. Oh my God, this is how my grandmother grew up. This is where my ancestors are from. So I feel a really big responsibility to just take advantage of every opportunity that they never had and to really change the course of our lineage, and to break and shatter the glass ceiling towards poverty. And it's not even just financial, it's actually spiritual too. Like, for example, like a super quick short story, like my mom came to visit not long ago and I gave her some white towels to shower with. And the towels were essentially too nice for her. She was like, no, don't give me those. Give me just the ratty ones. And my heart broke. And my heart broke to a million pieces. I was like, here's my own mother who's, does not feel worthy enough to use white towels. Mind you, they were $16 from World Market. Like it was nothing fancy. But like it was like I was like, wow, this is more than just financial poverty. This is like a worthiness poverty. And I just feel responsible for like I want to be the last person that stops here. And like from now on, my son's kids, I just want to change the trajectory of that. So it's not just with my music, but just with everything I do in life in general.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stephanie. When I grew up in Sweden, I felt, a minority in the community, first and most. And coming from a Filipino background, our culture in general is stemming so much from pride. And my mom was this strong woman that raised, 4 kids. And she kept pushing me to tell me, you gotta show up for yourself. You gotta stand up for yourself. And during this time period, music was the only thing that I felt really connected to as a human being and as a teenager. And I definitely felt that music shaped the way I looked at things. And it allowed me to kind of see that I'm not the only one in this community that feels this way. And I definitely feel a responsibility knowing this, that I'm not the only one. And if I could, inspire others to feel the same way, that you can actually grow away or at least grow from everything that you've experienced from your past with ancestral traumas and whatnot, that your parents deliberately gave to you as a kid. I definitely felt that responsibility, and maybe the pride from my mom as well kind of grew on me to say, hey, you got to stand up a little bit for yourself and maybe stand up for others as well and show them the light where it can be existing.
Right. And music is such a huge part of Filipino culture in general. It's it is the fabric of our culture, the food, the music, the karaoke, and the dance. So it's just like, even if you cannot sing as a Filipino, it does not matter. You are going to sing.
Girl, I might be the minority Filipino who cannot sing. Like, I'm like, I wish I could do that, but I really want to, but I can't. Sounds good in the car.
We'll dance.
Just don't open the windows.
Nikki, I from what Stefani and Joveth are saying, you specialize in helping BIPOC communities within the clinical space. Do you often come across these same themes of trauma and grief, and also the worthiness component that Stefani had mentioned, and trying to, rectify and change the course of lineage? Is that something that comes up for you?
Oh, all the time. The worthiness is enormous for clients of any type, whether they're I have musicians and I have, day-to-day students and, different avenues of work, but the worthiness and the permission to ask, the permission to be allowed to have and ask for, like, the white towels, we're not I don't know, it's generational, it's intergenerational where it comes down of like, I'm not allowed to have that. Don't have big needs. Don't ask for things. Don't take up too much space. It's constant. And it's like, while I have to cater to and validate those feelings because that's cultural, I also have to be like, we can be empowered too with your culture, and so it's this hard line.
Gosh. Well, before we started this conversation, Ariel and I were talking about whose voices in the industry often get heard and whose stories get buried or never heard. And that's why we host these conversations monthly. And I'd love to know, Joveth and Stefani, how do you navigate industry spaces that may lack representation behind the scenes? Does that ever bother you? And if so, how do you kind of work through that?
You want to start, Stephanie?
Sure. Yeah. I think in general, if there is something lacking, I take note and I say, okay, I want to see something different. And I try to really step into that role and be like, I want to be the change in this space. And I really want to offer the things that weren't offered to me, or, give the support to artists and songwriters in the ways that I didn't receive support. So I just feel like the answer really is just stepping in and being the leader of that and leading the change wherever it's lacking. And it's not even just obviously culturally as well, but just what we need as creatives, like Foundation, the SONA Foundation and Backline and all these things. We were talking backstage about how like you guys didn't have these things when you were growing up. And so when I am sitting down to create events, whether it's, master classes, boot camps, whatever, with our creative coaching company, we're really just like, what's missing? What's missing in this space? And how can we create events and cool things to support artists and songwriters so that they're really getting the support that they need? So that's kind of how I approach it.
Love that. Joveth, how about
you? It's I never really think about, as I said, being three cultured growing up in Philippines and Sweden in America. I don't try not to think it that way. How we're separated in cultures and whatnot. I look at it more as like, how can I be as a person to increase everyone's confidence in the room, no matter what background you're from. And it, as I've learned, coming from a Filipino culture, it's all about connections and also like feeling empowered and increasing everyone's confidence in the room when some people might lack of it. I definitely feel like the leader role most of the time when I do get involved in a group setting. Just as a leader role, I think that's stemming mainly from my mom. Just understanding and listen to everyone in the room, what they have to say, and respect one another. It's hard to say. I think we're missing a lot of leader roles in our communities that are great examples, and it's something that I look forward to meet more of.
I love that. Nikki, what are some of the most common mental health challenges that you see among AAPI creatives around mental health? We kind of touched a little bit about worthiness. What are some additional challenges that you see?
Oh, right. Number one, imposter syndrome, right? I have that, and I'm a therapist. So it's, I mean, yeah, like, am I good enough? Am I just being told I'm good enough? Can I have like this amazingly high night of performance and then go home and beat myself up with the negative talk in my head? Absolutely. They can both exist and they both happen all the time. Identity struggles, cultural expectations, the model minority myth, family expectations. Let's be honest, like being creative. I went to graphic design school where the rest of my family went to medicine, and they were like, what's wrong with her? Why does she got to be why does she got to be always the opposite? And it's like, yeah, it's not the stable career. So creative, music, art, any of that, never. Even now as a mental health professional, I think my family a little bit is like, what are you doing? I've never gone the road that everyone else went. Isolation in creative spaces, which is kind of what you guys were talking about, but you take the lead on it, which is fantastic, because when you add imposter syndrome and a lack of worthiness, we're not going to speak up. We're going to stay quiet in a corner, right? Perfectionism, overachievement, all of those things, anxiety, depression, all of that will come along with it. And let's say you experience trauma in your life. Let's say your parents experienced extreme trauma and now you're carrying their bag of rocks on top of it. It's like this all comes down the pipeline. We show up with pain that we don't even know is ours most of the time.
Wow. I want to sit with that for a second. We show up with
it's a hard one. It is like, people don't take into consideration, especially culturally, and especially what you're watching happen now in marginalized communities and other countries and wars. Like, that isn't just them that's happening to. It's generations, and their generations before them had all of that with it. Like, you just have to, like, you don't even know why am I this heavy, and why does this pain feel so intertwined into all of us, and we can't even put our finger on it, because we never walked into earth in it, we just walked with it.
Wow. So talking about families and mental health, this is a question for all three of you, but have you felt supported in speaking about mental health, whether it's your own, whether it's your family's, within the family dynamic? Is that a conversation that is allowed within your family spaces?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting culturally is that I think that, because my mom grew up in poverty, so did my dad, I think it was almost like a luxury to be sad or whatever. Like, it was, what came first was like survival. We need food. We need rice. We need, you didn't have time to even consider, am I depressed today? You know what I mean? And so there's been a lack of sort of language around your emotions, because they're not armed with the language to describe their own emotions. It wasn't a priority for them as well. And there's a sort of lack of awareness, lack of education coming from my parents. I wouldn't say that they weren't supportive of me. I just don't think they were equipped mentally. They didn't have the knowledge. To this day, my mom, like, I don't know, I think maybe I was depressed at one point in my life, and she probably was, but didn't have the words to describe it or to understand that it's a condition, it's a thing, and that there's tools and strategies to support yourself. And so, I do feel a little sad that, my mom didn't have that support. And I don't know if this is a direct result of that, but, when I was 18, I suffered from severe depression. And for about 6 months at my worst, I was suicidal and wanted to drown in my bathtub, didn't want to be here anymore. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the self-care book that I wrote, was because I was like, this is so challenging to be in a creative space, like you said, Nikki. And also, if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person, that's a whole other bag of things that you got to deal with. And then, all of a sudden you're in this music industry thing where there's no rules. It's a wild, wild west. And it's a perfect recipe for a mental health disaster. So I was like, I'm just going to put together all of my things that helped me get out of the depression myself. And luckily there's spaces like Backline and SONA Foundation. There's things that are coming up now, but I think it wasn't a thing for my parents at all. So.
Wow. I want that book.
You and Joveth.
Autographed. Okay. Honestly, I don't know. Mental health wasn't really discussed in my family. I feel like in my family particularly, as I said, my mom was very prideful. It was about push through, be strong, don't show any weaknesses. And there was never any openness to talk about feelings and vulnerability in terms of how you're feeling about certain things, or even analyzing what that means to you. So me growing up in this kind of culture, it was very hard for me to figure out my ways around emotional, specifically like relationship or friendships. It was hard for me to navigate through communication until, I moved to America and I started writing and figuring out who I am as an artist. It became kind of my therapist in a way, where I could figure out my inner thoughts and my inner feelings into lyrics. But yeah, I just said, like, even today, I feel like my parents still don't even talk about feelings. They kind of don't have that in them. They do probably, but in a different sense than I do. But yeah, it's probably stemming from all the ancestral trauma they got from their parents, etc. So it's something that I felt that I needed to break and figure out myself. Hence, that's why I moved to America.
Nikki, does any of that resonate with you and
Oh,
family dynamics?
I mean, I'll disclose to you, my mother died by suicide. That's how much we didn't talk about it. And
Right.
so that sent me on a trajectory to change my entire outlook. Like, without that, I wouldn't be on here with you. I wouldn't be a therapist, but that's where I went, because clearly there's a need. We have to talk about it. And so it's my mission since grad school, since I took that stupid multicultural class, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I have to do. Like, I have to bring this to people who won't talk about it, because religion, family, we don't share that about us. We don't tell other people. We go to God, which are all fine and dandy, but we can't hold all that in. We can't suppress it. And we have to talk about it. And I think for Filipino families, it's like, what's the Filipino mom say? No, you don't tell anyone outside what is happening in this family right now. Like, make it look pretty.
Nikki, I want to thank you for telling us that and for sharing that. I also lost my father to suicide, and that is then what prompted me to take a deep look at my own mental health and then work with Backline. And so that's a really powerful thing that you were able to take that trauma and turn it to something where you can help others within the mental health space. So thank you so much. That really
Thank you. You're doing the same.
We're trying every day to break that cycle within family, right? So the music industry, Stefani, you mentioned it, can be, I believe you said, the wild, wild west, which it very much so is and can be. Are there particular pressures or expectations that you've all felt working in the industry? And if so, how do you cope with those?
Yeah, I think for me, this is kind of just coming from like a female perspective. I definitely, obviously there's a whole slew of challenges that we have to face as women in this industry that men don't have to deal with. And so there's that. But again, I think I saw this post recently about like the statistics of like how many female leaders there are versus men, and it was like 15% are CEOs, and of that 4% are women of color CEO roles. And I was like no, not having that has to change. So I cope with it in the sense that I'm like, okay, again, there it is. There's the thing that I don't want to see. And how do I change this? And just lead by being the change that you want to see. I know it's so corny, but it's so true. Like, it really is. Like, if you don't like something, what are you going to do about it? Right? So, and again, like, I had opportunities and privilege that my parents never had, and so I always try to like put that in my head. And Nikki, I'm so glad you mentioned that earlier about like, oh, like sometimes you carry this weight that you don't know what it is. And you totally solved this for me. Like, I was like, I've been feeling the weight of my ancestors without knowing it. And so with that, I'm just like, okay, noted. I'm gonna try to change the course here, and let's course correct and do something good with what we have. Yeah.
Stefani, you said that, and it reminded me of, I was doing this training. It's called Brain Spotting for Trauma, and it had an intersectionality and social justice flair to it.
Okay.
And the woman teaching it was this amazing Black woman. And she stood in front of us and she said, all your ancestors are along that back wall watching you right now. And I like tears fell and I didn't even know it was happening. I was like, what is this? What is it?
Yeah, I feel that. I really feel that. I feel that hardcore. Mm-hmm.
No one has ever said that to me before. And I
Mhm.
was like, ugh, that was such a gut punch, but in the most delightful way, right?
Exactly.
Like,
I'm just like, you went through all that, what am I, I'm just like, okay, let's do this. Like, the torch got passed and, let's just light a fire. Like, let's just burn it all down, start over. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Wow. Joveth, what about you? Do you feel these pressures and expectations within the industry?
Absolutely. I think there's pressure in general in the industry. And being, Asian already, it's growing up in Sweden and growing up, minority, it feels constantly that you feel like you're being pressured to do things and you have to showcase yourself as a leader constantly. And there's always pressure in the industry for me. And now being in my age 30s, I definitely feel this mental midlife crisis where I'm like, okay, am I going to be an artist? Am I going to be a songwriter? Am I going to be an engineer? So navigating through the industry, since being a teenager, always dreamt about being on stage and performing. And that kind of like idea of me as an artist is now cultivating into something more like, okay, what can I do to be part of the industry, to be part of it, and still be happy with what I'm bringing into the table. But as a songwriter, I definitely feel like I'm more in the artsy, hippy dippy side where I want to create art until I'm old and dying. I feel like that's my essence of calling, and I could care less, honestly, what the industry thinks. Sometimes I just wanna be an artist, and I wanna give everyone a good positive energy as whoever I meet, and create good art and make a difference in people's ears, the way we present our art to them. And also for me, it's a therapy. So going through the industry has been tremendous struggle because there's always this viral this, streaming this, you need numbers this, and it's hard for me as an artist to constantly look at that and feel like where do I balance between the authenticity of where all this art is coming from and all this generational things that are going on in my life that I want to express in the art. And it can become very, very difficult to navigate through it. So, and right now, people sometimes that I work with in the industry don't see it that way, the way I look at it, because I'm, as I said, the hippie artist, and for them, it's just all about numbers and whatever can create tractions. And to me, that loses the aspect of the true art, the true artistry. That's the way I look at it.
I really appreciate you bringing that up because it is so true. I think there's so many different sides of the industry. A big majority, though, are folks who just look at the numbers, just look at how well something is tracking and whatnot, and kind of lose the essence and soul of what it really is all about, which is creating and expression. So how do y'all care for your mental health while navigating those expectations and demands? What do you do on a daily basis to kind of, make sure that you're taking care of yourself? This is a question for all three of you.
Yeah, I think this is something that I talk a lot about in my book, is like the number one thing is like identifying what self-care looks like to you, because it looks different to everybody. And not only that, but it changes depending on what season you are in your life. So my self-care just completely changed because I just became a mom. So I drop down to the basics. I still have to drop down to the basics of, am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating well? Am I hydrating? Am I moving? And some days I don't get to all four of those things. And so one of the things that I talk about is just like, okay, do the check-in of where are you at with your basics, because start there first, and then you can sort of take on, additional things like the bubble baths and the whatever. But for me, daily, I definitely need quiet time. I need alone time. Being an a highly sensitive person, that's like the number one thing that I need the most, just to center and feel grounded. And I think that's part of the reason why I've made this artist development program, is because we want to help people increase their impact and their input in their income and their visibility with their music, while also taking care of themselves. So we really try to treat the artist as not a number, not just like, is it tracking, is it, performing or whatever, but like to treat the artist as a holistically, like to care for them holistically. So that's kind of our approach. But yeah, self-care changes day to day. So it just kind of depends on where you're at.
That's awesome. I feel like my self-care is alone time and writing. I feel like being in a studio really makes me feel me and re-energize me. Quite frankly, being social around people drains my entire energy. But being in nature, I like camping. I say at least once a year, I go out to camp and just for a weekend, be with the nature and just breathe and be outside of the city for a little bit and all the noise. Definitely nature is my number one. I feel like that's stemming from my ancestors coming, from Philippines. We're like nature, and there's something healing about it for me as a person and as an artist. Stepping outside of the regular things that you constantly do every day is part of a routine. I like to take baths, so Stephanie, yes. And I like to cook. Actually, believe it or not, meditating. I feel like coming from Filipino culture, doing the things that I love, and seeing my family, what they love to do, actually allows me to feel connected to my, background and my ancestors. So cooking, definitely a meditative state of me. So my boyfriend right now enjoys it because I cook every day. He's lucky. I cook every day, because it's part of my ritual self-care. And it's also, like seeing my boyfriend enjoying the food that I cook. It's some form of not just validation, but it's some kind of like, oh my God, I make people happy. And that's a form of self-care for me. Seeing other people happy around me is, I don't know, that's just rewarding.
I love that. Nikki, what about you? What are some self-care practices that you either do or you encourage your clients to do?
Like Stephanie said, it changes based on life and what's happening. I mean, in the pandemic, I hiked miles and miles and miles and miles. Then I could slow down and I did yoga for months and months, like 4 times a week. Right now, I didn't realize how much sitting you do as a therapist. It's caused a whole different range of body aches that I had no clue. Cooking. I have recently started cooking more Filipino food, and the comfort of that, and oh God, this reminds me of when mom cooked this and I was 6 years old. The smells, the taste, all of it, the texture. And with culturally dynamic clients that come from different places, and food, especially in Asian culture, food is so important and bonding and connecting. I have done that where I've told them, I'm like, okay, how about this week your mindfulness practices are, you can cook the meal with intentionality, and then I want you to eat it just as intentional. I want you to taste everything. I want you to smell everything. I want you to feel every texture in your mouth. Something about that focus and being present gets them back in their body. And then they can associate memories and emotions to the eating. And they don't have to be negative, and they can be positive and empowering at the same time. So, yeah.
I love
the occasional bubble bath.
It's okay. I was going to say, I love
sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the commonalities between cooking for y'all and also bubble baths. And and also, Stephanie, yeah, I really love what you said. It all depends on the season of your life that you're in, and how self-care will look and should look differently. I love that. I think that that's so important. And Nikki, you mentioning, at first it was hiking, and then it was going to be yoga, and just kind of seeing what works for you in the moment that you're in, and kind of meeting yourself where you're at, I think is so important for folks to remember. Nikki, I know we're going to wrap up this conversation. I have a couple more questions left, but Nikki, what advice do you give to your AAPI artists, creatives, folks that you see that are trying to preserve their mental wellness in environments, specifically now where things are getting heavier day by day, that may not, reflect or understand their identity or even promote their identity?
Advocate for yourself. Have boundaries. Know your values. Know what values and boundaries are porous and rigid, like where are you going to bend and where you're not going to bend. Communicate needs clearly and directly. It doesn't mean being a jerk. It just means this is what I need for this to work for me, and I'm not afraid to ask for it. Build community. Community is like, if I don't tell every client this, I get mad at myself. But you need community. Like, connection is how you heal, and it's how you heal trauma. You have to have people. You have to have a support system. Community is extremely hard to find. Like, I live in Nashville. Finding Filipino community is super hard. And I finally found them. They're all my clients, so I can't be in community. I can't go hang out. And I'm only one of 2 Filipino therapists in town, and the other one is my therapist. So it's like, we're this small. There's not a lot, but you have to find your community, whatever that is, if it's musicians or fellow therapists or whatever that is. Is it a cooking circle? Is it a book club? Whatever. And then be grounded in your identity, and don't be afraid to explore and express your culture. Like, hold on to that, because that's going to bring you back to like your roots, your foundation, your grounding. You always have that. You always know who you are when you have that. Yeah.
I love that. Community. I that resonates a lot as well. I think with a lot of folks who kind of, sometimes this industry can make you feel like you're on an island. So I think that that's really important to remember, is find your people. Last question, Stefani, Joveth, what advice would you give emerging songwriters navigating the industry today? If there was something that someone could have told you when you first entered the space that may have been helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm actually just going to echo back what Nikki said with like finding your community. Like, with our creative coaching company, that's what we're all about. Like, every event we have, we try to create a space where you can show up, you can get in the room with hit songwriters, you can get mentored by them, you can have them hear your music, you can have them, you can ask them questions and be like, how did you do this? Or how did you cope with that? Like, there's, for the first hour, like, you're literally just getting mentorship from people that have done it before you. And that's so, so, so powerful. And people feel seen, they feel heard, they feel visible. And that experience in and of itself is super powerful. And so I just, I think that's, if I could give a piece of advice, is like, find your community. And, there are things out there now that can support you. Like you said, Terra, like, it may not have been there for us, but like, it's being created now. And just reach out to those people, find your people. And, you get to create the life that you want, and you can do it. And there's people there to support you and nurture you and guide you. And so, if you're interested in reaching out to us, we are happy to be your team member on this journey. Yeah.
Woo-hoo. I'm going to echo the same way. I feel like, from my experience in general, I feel like the community that I build around me or that I join has helped me go through things, not just by myself. And having another set of ears and eyes that you trust is super helpful for people who come from a background of trauma or anything dark. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. You're not alone.
Yes.
And find those people that can support you. Sorry, did I interrupt you, Stephanie? I hope I didn't interrupt.
No, I was agreeing with you.
And share positivity. I think people love positivity. And no matter whether you meet people in the dark spaces, be the light that you have inside you.
Mm. I love this conversation so much and just want to thank all three of you for taking the time and space and also for your vulnerability, for your honesty and just candidness. It really, this was a highlight conversation for me, just getting to learn more about your perspectives and how you move through the industry and how you help folks in the industry. All of it is just thank you for doing the work and continuing to do the work and shining that light, as Joveth said. So I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time and for celebrating AAPI Heritage Month with us. And we will absolutely direct folks to your music, to the creative coaching, to your practice, because I know that folks are going to want to reach out. So after watching this, so thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Ariel.
Hey, Terra. Oh, that was just a rewarding conversation to be here listening to, you know.
It
Thank
really,
you.
I'm glad to hear that. It was definitely a highlight one for me. Just the joy that was kind of within the space. I love learning about their cultural identities and their different perspectives. I love the karaoke moment. That was a really sweet moment. And I also just, it really helped hearing Nikki talk about the generational trauma that we all carry and more than likely don't realize that we're carrying it and how that can impact us in our day-to-day and in our decisions, the way we move, the way we create even. That was really powerful.
You know, this conversation reminded me of one of the things about, I guess maybe all art. I was going to say songs, but now that I'm thinking about it, also theater and, you know, visual art. It's like by seeing or hearing in this conversation an expression of one person's truth or collectively, you know, people's truth, it kind of gets inside us and we start to look at it against our own experiences. So, you know, as our guests today were talking, you know, especially about that ancestral weight and the ancestral trauma, but also I was thinking about, you know, the way our ancestors might add to the weight, the rocks in the back that we're carrying, but also the cheerleading on the sidelines. You know, it made me just, you know, remember, oh yeah, we all have ancestral background and what are my people, you know, what am I carrying from my people for good or bad? You know, in what ways are there, I don't know, is the richness of my family's background, you know, like helium and like lifting me up? And what ways is it just heaviness and pulling me down? And, you know, just hearing that conversation around that, also thinking about food and cooking and the ways that, you know, I'm getting ready to go to Nashville tomorrow, and I'm from the South originally, and my family is Jewish. And so my earliest food memories are Southern foods and also Jewish foods. It's like hush puppies and matzo ball soup, you know, kind of the two things. And I've been excited to head over to Tennessee because I'm like, oh man, I just need some biscuits and grits, you know, and yeah. Just like, you know, when I'm in the kitchen, like, you know, cooking, and some of the things that I have made for my family who, you know, my sweetheart and my stepdaughters are not from my family background. And, you know, now on Christmas Eve, you know, the thing that they always want to have is matzo ball soup. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, you know, the ways that we, you know, bring those flavors into and forward, you know, so I don't know. I was thinking about that a bit while you all were talking about food. And I think it was Stefani who said that sadness was a luxury in her family.
Yes. Yeah.
And that also got me thinking a lot about the luxury of sadness.
Yeah, it really resonated with what she was saying as someone who is also mixed and kind of, I come from family members that were, came from deep poverty. It was all about survival for my mother and for my father. And so not having even that space to even sit down for a moment and think about, how am I feeling today? How am I actually doing? That really resonated. And also as a child of that, you do tend to carry that heaviness and that sadness of, and maybe even guilt of now having the capacity and time to think about your own mental health and whereas your parents didn't. It's definitely going to stick with me, thinking about the luxury of sadness and what that all entails and carries.
Yeah. And I was also thinking about, so many overlapping, I mean, this is the intersectionality that we talk about, like there's so many overlapping topics came into this particular conversation, and I think I'll probably rewatch this conversation knowing some of those other topics that came up and just like, oh, I want to hear this conversation, through the lens of that, and through the lens of this other thing. Yeah, I guess that's why hashtags were invented, right? Like,
yeah.
Note to self. Well, Terra, I'm just so pleased. I don't know what the right word is here, but uplifted, I guess, by it's Mental Health Awareness Month, in addition to, as you mentioned, in addition to AAPI Heritage Month. And I'm really uplifted by the work that you all are doing over at Backline. Thank you for all the work that you do over there. And thanks for being part of these conversations here.
Thank you for having me. It is always an honor. Always.
Yeah. Let's do it again next month, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Terra. Bye-bye. And thank you all for being here, for watching. This particular conversation was pre-recorded due to some travel schedules that we were coordinating. And so I will be popping into the chat. If you're at this point in the video, you have already gotten that. And just thank you for being here. Feel free to share this and watch the other 21, 22 conversations that we've had. They're all linked on our website, sonafoundation.com. And we hope to see you next month for another conversation. Reach out at hello@sonafoundation.com if you have a story that you would like to share, if you'd like to be a part of these conversations with songwriters. Thank you so much for being here, and take good care.